How's it going, Connection Point Church? I hope you're doing well. In fact, that's actually what I want to talk to you about today. How are you doing? Thanks for stopping in for another daily devotional this morning. We hope that you've been able to make these a part of your daily routine and that they've been able to bring you encouragement. If you've ever read the 5 Love Languages book, my primary love language is words of affirmation, which is something that my wife Emily loves to be reminded of. If you haven't read the book, words of affirmation essentially means that Emily can make me feel more loved and appreciated whenever she tells me that she appreciates me, which to me seems pretty straightforward, and I'm not sure how that's not true for everybody, but apparently some people have different love languages. I think that the Pharisees had the same love language too, because Jesus says this about them in Matthew chapter 23, verses 5 through 7. They do all their deeds to be seen by others. They love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others. Even if your love language isn't words of affirmation, we do always, at some point or another, find ourselves desiring that affirmation from other people based on the things that we do. The world tells us that joy and happiness can come from self-sufficiency, going out on your own, being your own person, not being inside the box, going against the status quo. But as Jesus pointed out, even if we receive a place of honor or are called leaders or teachers, a lot of times we aren't happy until other people acknowledge us for this or give us affirmation. As Jesus pointed out in these verses, the rabbis, they were satisfied when they were greeted by others in the marketplace and when they were called rabbis. It wasn't just the fact that they were rabbis that satisfied them, it was the fact that other people recognized their place. And that's ironic because the world tells us that joy and happiness will come from our self-sufficiency, that relying on ourselves and not others is what will bring us joy. You see, the definition of sufficient, according to dictionary.com, is adequate for the purpose or enough. But sufficient doesn't really work here because we aren't truly happy a lot of times whenever we try to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and that's not sufficient because we desire praise from other people for our self-sufficiency. Evidently, self-sufficient isn't sufficient. There's an emptiness that we have that desires to be filled when we truly just rely on ourselves. This is a joy that the world claims to offer, but it is a counterfeit joy. It's actually not true that the self can be sufficient. We weren't designed that way. If you caught Pastor Toby's devotional yesterday, he talked about a counterfeit paradise. You see, we were designed to be in a paradise, walking with God, relying fully on Him. But there came a moment whenever humans were deceived, and instead of relying on God like we were supposed to, we chose to rely on ourselves and be like God. That's the original lie. That's what it means. The lie was, hey, you don't have to be here in this garden relying on God. You could be like God. And since that moment until now, we see the evidence of human striving for self-reliance instead of relying on God and having faith in God. Jesus saw this as well, for sure. In John chapter 5, verse 44, it says, "How can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that comes from the only God?" And without saying it there, Jesus is saying you can't. Faith is made impossible when we're seeking the praise of others. Because when we're seeking the praise of others, we're looking to ourselves. And faith is the opposite of that. Faith is looking to God instead of ourselves. And if we continue to seek these praises that come from others, like Jesus says in this verse, we don't continue to seek the glory that comes from only God. Because the fact of the matter is that faith is being satisfied in what God is for you through Jesus. But if we would turn from ourselves as a source of satisfaction and instead turn to Jesus as a source of our joy, that emptiness inside of us will turn to a fullness. Jesus calls it a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Psalm 4:7 says, "You have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound." Church, we weren't designed to rely on ourselves. We were designed to rely on our designer. And when we do that, itch that we have for the satisfaction of others, it is completely erased and replaced with a fullness that only comes from Christ. Connection Point Church, we love you. We are praying for you. Let's continue throughout this Tuesday looking to Jesus as our source of joy. Be blessed.